Oftentimes, when we're starting a community, or let's say we're even starting to post online or starting a podcast, we want people to show up for us, meaning we want them to come to our event. We want them to listen to our podcast. We want them to like our stuff. But any of those forms take time to build trust. And what I realized is I have to show up almost 10 times for you before I start to gain your trust. And you know, hey, yes, Sadie hosts the Women in Data events on the third Thursday of every month. And I wasn't able to make it to the past 2 months, but they've been consistent. They're there, and I'm going to go to the next one. And it's really that consistency. That was the thing, for 3 years, it was just a grind of every month have an event, right? If I couldn't find a speaker, I'd just do a demo of something I recently learned, But that consistency not only built trust in the community, but then got the reps in for me.
Don't forget to subscribe to Data Neighbor wherever you listen to podcasts and YouTube. And drop a like and comment below. It keeps us bringing you great content like this.
Hello, everyone. Today, we are thrilled to have Sadie, and she is a founder of the CEO of Women in Data. How cool is that, right? And she led a global movement empowering tens of thousands of women to build meaningful careers in data and AI. She is currently a founder of the Human Machine Collaboration Institute and one of the most, visionary voices shaping how humans and technology co-evolve. We love what you post, Sadie, on LinkedIn. We love all your content and are looking forward to sharing all your insights in Data Neighbor podcast today.
Such a pleasure
Welcome,
to be here.
Sadie.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Excited to be here.
So Sadie, could you please let us know, you have such unique background, right? So you had an experience. Let me know if I'm wrong here, but I think you have a very unique experience. You have experience studying piano, psychology, and then you started working in a neuroscience lab, and you finally moved into data science and women in data, and now a founder. How cool is this journey? Where did it start? Would love to know how it all started.
Yeah, I would say the common thread, because we're going to bounce around a lot. I call it a winding road and a winding path. But the common thread really, I would say, is curiosity and having a question of what's next and where can I be most useful? So I grew up on a farm and there wasn't a lot to do. I was homeschooled, so I played the piano a lot. And that's what got me into a school with a full scholarship for piano performance. I just tell people, my parents didn't let me watch TV, so there wasn't anything else to do. I just played the piano a lot. But it worked out. It got a large portion of school paid for, which anybody still paying student loans knows that's really helpful. So I highly recommend have your kids play instruments because there's a high chance they could get a scholarship. But most importantly, when I got to school, I just fell in love with all of my science classes, and particularly learning about the scientific method and getting exposed to it in a more rigorous way. I think in university, you learn about it when you're younger, but in university, you really get to dive into research papers. From that, I just was so fascinated by music and the brain and switched my major because I felt that there was a carryover between understanding music, but also understanding it in humans. And so switched my major to psychology, really wanted to then just dive deeper into the brain. And so wanted to start working in a neuroscience lab. I was doing experiments on emotional learning and memory. And I found myself one Friday afternoon working in the bottom of a basement. Anybody who has lab experience knows sometimes you end up in really dingy place. And so I'm in the bottom of this basement. I've been taking care of my rodents for the past, 6 months. We've been running experiments. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm going to have to euthanize these rodents, right? I don't know why that didn't cross my mind before. And I just realized I don't want to start my weekend unfortunately killing some rats, right? That's not how I want to start my weekend. So I did what any young person would do, was just take out a piece of paper and put what parts of my job do I actually like? And what I found that I liked was I loved the analysis. I loved collecting. I loved having the data and then doing the analysis. I like coming up with experiments. And so I just put that into Google search. Now is when we sound old because we didn't have ChatGPT. So I put it into Google search and it showed up this term data science. And I was like, wait, I've never even heard of this. What is it? So I started like reading blogs. Again, this is web like one that we're talking about here. This sounds like me. And so that Monday I went into the lab. I quit my job at the lab and was like, all in on data science, took some of the first courses on Coursera, and was just like, I got to get a job getting my hands on data. And I did. And that's where my tech career started.
My God. First thing, I want to say something. You said what? Like, the young person would do, just sit, have a paper and write down what they like. I don't think that happens. Sadie,
Okay.
people just go on with their lives, think their job is boring and just complain and, continue doing that. So it's amazing that you did that at that stage. So that just tells a lot about who you are and your personality. It's not a common. Like, I remember being stuck at something for a long time until like I had to push myself out of that situation to get there. And I'm so glad that you got to do that, like as part of your experience. It was pretty cool. One thing I wanted to ask you was when you said data science, right? Was it just learning about data science? Like, didn't you feel it's a new field, or like how did you get from there to actually maybe starting women in data, and because you didn't even know about it, to finally becoming someone who talks about it and gets people
Yeah.
together about it? So
Yeah, it was a very new field at the time. And the reason why I know it was very new is because when I looked to get a master's degree in it, there were only 5 universities even offering master's degrees. So,
Oh.
I have mentees who come up to me and they're like, Sadie, how did you pick? And I was like, it was easy. There were 5. My options were like, I can compare all 5 of them. Today, like every university pretty much has degree in this. And so it was somewhat hard, but it was somewhat easier because the choices were limited. The only class on Coursera was the John Hopkins like first data science series class. It was like these
I
4
remember that.
module. You
I
remember,
remember that
like
too.
everybody back in the day, like everybody took this. And in some ways, to be honest, I think it was easier to get in the field because there were so few of resources. It was like, this is the class, you take this class. Now, today, it's like, where do you even start? I mean, there's so many different things to learn. So, in some ways, I feel lucky to get in it early. I do wish I had ChatGPT or some LLM model to help me code, but I'm better for it because of it. And so, it was really taking those classes, getting my master's degree, continuing to be curious at my job. I went from a research analyst to an analytics engineer to a data scientist to leading a data science team. And what happened was, a year into that journey, I realized, coming from academia into the tech community, you grow in your career by having a community and learning from others. And I love that because in academia, it didn't feel that way. It was like, I don't want anybody seeing my data. I'm doing a really secret experiment. And tech was like, no, here's my code. Take it, go use it. Like, we were all copying and sharing and like trying to, I'm using air quotes if you're listening, cheat in any way we could, because like it was hard. So we wanted to like have friends to help figure it out. And I just felt really lonely that first year. And so again, like, I could sit here and complain, or I could start a group, meetup group called Women in Data, and see if anybody wants to join. What happened was, 2 people came to the first meeting, and from there we just kept meeting and kept meeting. 10 years later, we have a community of 70,000 people and members in over 100, representation of over 120 countries, which is just incredible.
120. Wow.
My good Lord.
That's crazy. Sadie, what would you say then? I'm guessing the mission has evolved over time. What is it with women in data that you're trying to accomplish back then versus like, I guess, right now?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in the beginning, it really just started with like a very personal need. Like, the personal need was like, I was really early in my career and I needed a community. I was like, if I'm going to survive, I need a community. And so, like, in the beginning, to be honest, it was just like having a community to collaborate with and learn from and grow. Also, given that the industry was fairly new. And today, as I feel like I've been able then to like put on my own mask, as they say, so to speak, before you help somebody else. Now I'm at a point in my career where like I was able to grow. I was able to establish myself. And that really shifted the organization to then be more focused on like, how do we just help increase diversity as a whole in data careers? And so that is Women in Data's mission today, which is increasing diversity in data careers. Like really simple and short, but just like, how do we do that from every angle? And so we do that through our 3 pillars of awareness, education, and advancement. And it really just comes in from you may come into Women in Data and maybe you're the one who needs to put on their own mask first and you're not helping anybody else, right? Like you're that new person in it. Or you may be more experienced and be like, hey, I have more that I can give. But it takes each individual and every one of us coming in with our own perspective and really taking and giving what we need.
That makes sense. Do you have any stats around maybe like the split between male, female in the data space that you can share?
Yeah, so it really changes now based on what I would say like job category. So if you look more at like data analyst, that we're going to be higher, roughly around like 30% almost female. The more you get into some of the newer roles, such as like a analytics engineer or anything type of machine learning engineer, those roles, you're down to like the 12%. Then when you get into the leadership roles of even like the C-suite of like a chief data officer, those, I mean, you're looking at 4 to 5%. So I would say it really spans the board anywhere from low end 4% if you want that subset all the way up to 30%. Because
Shravya, our next door experience is like what an outlier because just the backstory here. Back in next door when where we used to work, it's predominantly female, right? Like most of our
Yes.
colleagues on the data team were all female. All the management were mostly female.
So, hi, I think the coolest thing, the most interesting thing when we were at Nextdoor was it's because it was led by a female data science leader. And I see a correlation generally wherever I work. If we have a data science leader that's female, or to be honest, not just data science, any leader that's female, the other female tend to be more safer and end up accepting roles there and end up coming into those roles. I've seen that in marketing. I've seen that maybe marketing is slightly more on the female side, but I would say even in engineering, like when I see engineering managers or engineering like directors as female, there's tend to be like more engineering managers who are female, which is a really, really scarce female area of work as well. So I feel our experience of Nextdoor being slightly different from the mean or average, it's maybe because of that. We should like confirm it with data, but yeah.
I think it's a great hypothesis. To me, that's always been one of the concerning things too, is that because we have such low numbers in like executive positions, that's the lowest where we're at like the 3 to 4%. It's like, how do we make the change, and that's going to take longer over time. But if that's the case, right, we have to put a lot more focus then into those leadership positions because it trickles down into the other positions in the org as well.
So one of the things, I'm a senior manager right now, and one of the things that wanted me to get into management, because at some point, everyone, right, who wants to advance in their career have 2 options. Do you want to become like a leader, like a people manager, or do you want to become like a tech IC or, get into the like architect route of, the engineer, the data science engineer that you want to be? So I chose people leader for just this aspect that it really gives me joy and gives me a lot of like I'll be a lot more contentful if I get to maybe mentor more junior female data scientists and show them that even females could be leaders and see us grow. Hopefully that motivates others. So I think I had this goal beyond me, and that helped me stay focused and wanting to grow in this space. Yeah. And I
Totally.
actually thought
That's
of something else too. If you,
yeah.
Sadie, one cool statistic or like an insight is that before I got into Women in Data, so I worked with you to get into, so we didn't talk about that. So everyone, Sadie called me and I joined Sadie in one of the conferences with Women in Data. I was one of the panelists. And since then, because of all the great people who are in data science who are women, like we got to host them on the podcast, and we tipped over the scale towards averaging between more female. Like, now our scale of guests is so much better. We have more female as guests than when compared to before. We were like so many, like all the guests that we would want to get on the pod were like more, more male, but thankful for Women in Data Science, that Women in Data and other forums like Women in Data Science, that I get to chat with a lot of women in this field and find them and get them onto our podcast too. So yeah.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that because it also just goes to show, like, if you want to change something, it doesn't take that much action, right? It's like that first step and a little bit of leverage, right? You went and spoke at this conference, you meet more, you slowly start to add them onto the podcast, and slowly it starts to tip the scales. And so that's what I think is just so amazing about communities, is like you just put a little bit out there and then you get back tenfold, which is incredible.
What was the experience growing the women in data community, especially during the early days? How did you sort of like make it grow? Because anything hard is kind of like the code start problem, and so would love to kind of see if you can draw some parallels for our listeners who are thinking about maybe starting something in their own pain points.
Yeah, I wish there was like some magic formula, but the biggest thing that I would say is really just consistency. Like, it's the same, it's as crazy as it sounds, it's the same thing that I taught my piano students, and I had to learn myself as a pianist in the early days, which is like you just have to put in your reps, right? You have to put in your time. And what I found particularly with a community is you have to put in time for two different reasons. Oftentimes, we want, when we're starting a community, or let's say we're even starting to post online or starting a podcast, we want people to show up for us, meaning we want them to come to our event. We want them to listen to our podcast. We want them to like our stuff. But any of those forms take time to build trust. And what I realized is I have to show up almost 10 times for you before I start to gain your trust. And hey, yes, Sadie hosts the Women in Data events on the third Thursday of every month. And like, I wasn't able to make it to the past 2 months, but they've been consistent. They're there. Like, and I'm going to go to the next one. And it's really that consistency. Like, that was the thing. Like, for 3 years, it was just a grind of every month having an event, right? If I couldn't find a speaker, like, I'd just do a demo of something I recently learned, But that consistency not only built trust in the community, but then got the reps in for me. Cause like I was a tech nerd. Like, I didn't know anything about events. Like, I was so excited when we got a recruiter who said she'd offer pizza for our events. I was like, we are living large here. Like, we got pizza, you guys. Like, I didn't know anything about sponsors, any of that. And so again, like, it's so simple, but like, put in your reps, stay consistent, because you'll iterate, you'll grow, you'll learn. And most importantly, people will start to have that trust in you.
I just so love that, Sadie, because it's not just apt for starting something new. It's apt for everything. Like, I'll tell you something that I'm doing in my job right now as like a data science leader in growth. So I lead data science for growth team at Grammarly. And we have this a forum where we share insights every other week. And it's not easy to come up with something really cool and interesting every other week. And imagine if I don't show up one week with maybe, and then what would happen? People would just imagine that this person, there's a chance, there's a probability of them not showing up. So I better book another meeting on top of this meeting because there's a chance that this can get deleted like at the last minute, right? So I am like ensuring that this has to happen. The type of content, I'm again ensuring that I keep high quality as much as possible, right? They come in and they see not great quality, then I'm again losing trust. So ensuring that I stay consistent and the brand and the image of whatever you're trying to establish. It could be the insights. It could be maybe an ML forum. It could be like your input that you share after every project, right? Ensuring that you're consistent in the quality and output and you show up basically tells people to establish the trust. So once you have that, probably you could maybe skip once in a while, right? But you need to do a lot of hard work to get there. And yeah, I can totally see that getting, like helpful for almost all aspects of your work, of anyone's work.
Oh, totally. Was there an inflection point that you can kind of point to of like that was that moment that women in data took off and like so many more people found value out of it?
Yeah, so I have it into like 3 phases, right? There were like the first fundamental years, and that lasted, to be honest, the longest, like 5 years. And there wasn't like, I'd say, I don't want to say there wasn't a lot happening, but like it was, again, just putting in the reps. And so we had a couple chapters across the US in the first 5 years. I think we were roughly around like maybe 5 to 10 chapters and like 10,000 people. In 2019, I just started to, one of the great things about a community is you get to essentially hear from your user all the time because you're meeting on a monthly basis. And so it was like people loved getting together, but what they wanted was more like, what do I do in my off time or in my off hours? And so one of the things that I recognized was we needed like an online platform as well so that we could mirror, like have our in-person world and then our online world. Well, little did I know what was about to come in 2020,
COVID.
where we all just went online. We had it in our strategy in the beginning of 2020 to create this online platform. We were in the development of it in January. And so then March came, and here we were ready for this, right? Like we were expecting to do like change management, get people on the platform, all this with the community. And the universe instead had a different plan. It was like, here, I'm going to have no change management necessary. They're going to be beating down your door to get on this platform. And so that really was kind of the pivotal moment. It was just a good strategy decision and then life events that happened. And that really is what allowed us to expand a lot globally as well, because then there weren't any barriers. I mean, we had people join in from chapters or from different countries. And so it really allowed us to expand. And so part is just like listening to your community, trusting those like gut instincts, and then going from there. So that really was like, I would say, the big inflection point.
Have you
That's so
seen,
cool.
Sadie, as part of like your journey with women in data, someone that you've seen how women that probably were part of women in data, or maybe outside now that you're in that uh, community, thinking about women and how they do in tech, like something that's inspirational, any story from someone that you can remember within the community or someone like a leader you like, looked at as part of that effort?
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy is the stories I still get today. Just even yesterday, I got pinged from one of our local chapter leads in the city that I'm in, and she was like, "Hey, can I talk to you? And I'd like some career advice as well." So I was chatting with her. I didn't know this background at all, but 2 years ago, I had gone in and talked at her work. And at that time, she worked in sales. And she was just like, I thought it was so cool. Like, you were just this woman. And she's like, a woman in data, right? You were a woman in data. And like, I really liked it, but I'd never seen anybody like really in this space. And I just thought at the time, like, how cool would it be if I could get in this space and like maybe one day even be a chapter lead? And here we are, like 2 years later. I had no idea of this story that I had even came in and spoken at one of her events. She's now the tech lead for a nonprofit and has led their whole like Salesforce integration and is like expanding in her tech role and career and also leading one of our chapters. And so it's just like stories like that even, it happened yesterday on a walk that I heard this story. So you never know the impact that you're going to have. And sometimes it takes a couple years to even hear what it had on people too.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. I love stories like that where you gave a talk here and there, you showed up in one of the forums, and then people just got inspired and then did their thing, and then later give you the feedback that you were the one that inspired them. Almost like kids inspired to become astronauts kind of thing.
That's so true. And knowing about them somewhere, like, at a point totally later in time is like even more, interesting that this is what I think maybe people like you and now as part of Podcast High, we never know who we touch with these
Yeah.
podcasts. We never know who we touch as speaking at an event. I'm at an event right now in Women in Data Science at IBM. There are, I think, around 100 and 150 people. And I today spoke about imposter syndrome, how women deal with it, and what's my journey to leadership. And there were just people like right after my talk, I had to come set up for this podcast right now. People, like couple of women, they came out and they said, like they totally relate to how I felt imposter syndrome when I started out. And you wouldn't imagine, like when you speak, that you would actually resonate so much with someone and it would change the way how someone thinks. Yeah, it's a fascinating experience when you see that actually happen and impact people.
Yeah, and I would say also it goes the other way too. I mean, I have had amazing things happen to me, like from my students and from my community that I didn't expect as well. I mean, it's like, yes, there's like having an impact, but also then like you don't know what. Like I have so many previous students who have like risen up to like great heights and have given me now opportunities. So like
That's cool.
yeah, so example of this is I taught a class SQL for data science and it is on Coursera and over 600,000 people have taken it. So I have a lot of students
Wow,
across the world.
600,000. That's
That's a
pretty
lot of
cool.
people.
Oh, wow.
So one of those students now works at NVIDIA and she for the last GTC in March was like invited me to come and introduce me to a few people and then they had me on a panel to speak. Through that panel, the person hosting that panel, I got to know and told them what I was building at HMCI and the ecosystem. And they were actually looking for a city partnership at that time. So, because of that, HMCI was able to partner with NVIDIA to be like the first city that has this partnership. And so, like, it's massive. I mean, you're talking about like the largest company, with the largest market cap and like the leader in AI. And here we are, like this little startup and get to have this partnership with NVIDIA. And really all because of a student of mine who invited me to like come and partake. And so like again, that just like I just tell people these stories because you just never know the good that you put out in the world, how it will come back to you.
That
That
is
that's
amazing.
probably, yeah, so true. That's amazing. And that's probably like a nice segue, Sadie, into the AI world and
Yeah.
all the great like your insights into this area would be amazing. So what do you think? What do you think is like the vision of the future? I know you talk about it a bunch. I've seen you given like interesting like predictions about the future. Where are knowledge workers going to be? What do you think data science will be? And I would love to know after that about like HMCI, like what are you doing in that space and things like that.
Yeah, I think I just think it's a great time to be alive. I mean, how cool is it? Like we get to be here when we see what I would say where like AI comes to the masses, right? So if you've worked in the space for a while, like you're like, we've been using AI for a long time. You guys just don't know about it, right? It was always behind the scenes in operations. But like now AI is in the forefront and it's like where your mom talks about it, right? So to me, that's a really exciting time to be alive. And what I see is we're shifting again how we're doing computing and we're shifting from like traditional, really like more deterministic computing to more probabilistic computing. And so it's a big paradigm shift in terms of how we think. The analogy I use, just given my music background, it's going from like being a musician in the orchestra to conducting the orchestra. And so, all the musicians now are the agents or our AIs and our role shifts. That doesn't mean like I don't have to understand music. If anything, like as a conductor, I have to understand it even further. Like my scope has to expand even more. And I think that's what I see a lot of people miss is they think that we don't have to have skills to use AI. And I'm like, no, if you want to use it right, you have to have even like more domain knowledge, more areas of expertise so that you can really orchestrate and dictate and conduct what you want. And so that's really where I see us going is like the people who will be successful are those with like deep domain expertise and who can really expand and think about how to orchestrate teams, because that's how I see AI is like such an augmenter of who we are as people. If you're very narrow-minded and don't know how to communicate with people, that's going to be hard for you. So that's where I would focus my skills is like, yes, keep learning, keep getting domain expertise and learn how to effectively like orchestrate and lead people because it does translate into how we, how we communicate with agents as well.
Nice. I think we sort of like so far have talked to probably at least 20, 30 guests around the topic around AI, and pretty consistently everybody's like for anybody to be, quote unquote secure in this wave of rapid change, you've got to be pretty good at not just the tactical side of things. You have to be really, really great at, I think communication was one thing that always pop up. But then the other side is like just understanding the whatever you're doing, like business context, domain knowledge, or in the case of music, kind of like the entire, I don't know what you call it, but like the symphony, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
really, really well, because everybody's going to become managers, and then the actual hard skills are being commoditized pretty quickly. I love that it would be a great trailer if you kind of go against that, but I think it's just very, very common wisdom that I think still a lot of people don't quite grok enough in their heads. I don't quite understand why.
Yeah, I don't know what the barrier is there. The one thing that I would say is I do know is that like work is changing, right? So I think about just how, when I tell a story about how I got started in a field, it's like I Googled things, this and this, right? I just think about like, man, I don't work like that anymore. And so that's the one thing I really do know is like our process for how we get things done is really updating.
So you started HMCI, which stands
Hmm.
for Human Machine Collaboration Institute.
Yes.
What is HMCI, and what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so we are a research institute. We provide education, advising services, and really our research is more so focused on less about creating a white paper and more about how do we create a product or solution. And so after I had realized it was time for me to have someone new come in as a CEO for Women in Data, I really didn't know what I was going to do next. So I took about like 6 months to just figure out like what does that next phase look like for me. And the thing that kept coming to my mind was if you had to focus on one problem for the rest of your life, like what would it be? And what I found with myself is I like to solve really hard problems. And so where I came was, you know, AI has really raised a lot of more questions about humanity than I think at least I was ready for, right? So like one of the things that came up for me a lot with AI is just like, what does it actually mean to be human, right? If AI can code a website and develop a website, like I valued a lot of my work. What does it mean to be human? And so I really wanted to start to answer some of those questions and get back into the research and coming back to a new version of my neuroscience days, but not killing rodents. And so that was where the idea to create the Human Machine Collaboration Institute came from was how do we start to ask hard questions and provide value to our stakeholders, but most importantly, just to the community, because there's a lot more questions I think that need answered than they're providing. And so today, as I said, we do education, research and advising, but really what's that shaped into doing is building AI and robotics ecosystems for smaller to mid-sized cities. And so this kind of comes back into my community background where we realized it's not just the large cities or what I would call like the coastal cities that have to update in terms of how work is changing. It's really all economies. And so that's what our partnership with NVIDIA is and the city of Rancho Cordova is to build a regional AI and robotics ecosystem. And that stems everything from bringing in more researchers and hosting events and creating developers to come together and attracting businesses and developing startups. So I feel this very like complete moment where I get to pull in my research background, my community building with women in data, and what I love within AI at this time. And I think that's what I find companies to be is like typically just a reflection of their founder. And so HMCI is very much a Sadie's journey thus far.
That's cool. And then do you envision then through these communities, you replicate the women in data, let them foster and then an environment where everything would just simulate and kind of grow themselves, and then you have the multiplier effect?
Yes, exactly. So the vision with the communities there is that they're like these nodes in a network and that they become these research nodes. But like sequoia trees, they can share information and be connected underground that like supports how they continue to grow and develop. And so while Women in Data was focused more on increasing diversity in data careers, HMCI is really more so focused on not only lifting up communities I feel like that have been left behind from a city perspective, but also open sourcing research and tackling tough questions and bringing people together to tackle tough questions that, you know, may not have been asked before or may not have been answered.
So the tough questions, Sadie, do you mean that there are questions that tech cares about and there are different questions that probably are important for other areas, right? So do you think you also, that is an interesting part of what HMCI does too? Because not all questions are hot enough or sexy enough for everyone to deal with, but they are important questions and everyone needs to get empowered to these, areas. Is that like an aspect as well?
Yeah, I think what happens is there's a lot of opportunity to revisit questions and I would say create more citizen scientists. So the very first step of the scientific method is to just observe. And I'm like, what happened if we all started just like observing to find things that haven't been looked at again, right? I don't know, but you don't have to have a PhD to do science. Like it's just a methodology. And what's even better is AI is like kind of is our co-pilot in that process. And so I really hope to inspire and wake up more people to start to become their own citizen scientists, to start to have questions and run mini experiments and dive into that. And so that's really the goal is like, how do we inspire individuals to start to be builders, creators, and scientists?
Do you have themes of those perhaps questions that you care most about?
I do for my own personal questions, and my own personal questions tend to stem from I would say more of a psychological perspective. What was interesting, I'm curious whether each of you felt this way, but w- when you start to work with AI more, at least when I did, I started to ask basic questions of like, okay, this sounds like it's has an emotion, even though I know it doesn't, right? I know how it works. Like I can even picture like the nodes in the data center working and the energy humming, right? And it's like, okay, I know there's no emotion from this. But then I just asked the question of like, but what is emotion, right? And then you look it up and you're like, well, we change this definition all the time. Like we continue to learn more information all the time. And we don't have like a concrete theory of like, what is an emotion? Even who has emotions. That's been changing for time too. Like we used to be like animals, nope, right? They were like, okay, maybe some, maybe some primates will let them have some emotion, right? But we're not letting fish have emotion, right? But then we learn more information and that changes. And so it's really like those types of fundamental questions. And it was AI that really, I think, kind of has spurred me to ask what I would call more fundamental questions.
Actually, this makes me think, are you aware of Yuval Noah Harari? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. He's author of Sapiens and Nexus. Like he's a
Mm,
very big and bright author. He talks about he's one of those people that is on the other side of the AI game, where he talks about AI actually is an agent that's going to act like a social weapon for people, and people are going to use against it. The whole concept of ethics and emotions, like whatever you're touching upon, he talks about that. I'll give you an example or anecdote of this. I was talking to my dad the other day and he was telling me, I asked AI this question. He was just telling me about like an English framing, how he framed an idiom in English that's not there. And he's like, isn't this good? I'm like, I don't know. But then he was telling me, but ChatGPT loved it. It's like he was telling me, "Oh, it praised me that I asked a great question." And like I just told my dad, it says the same thing to everyone. You ask according to you, a dumb question to it, it's going to say how good or how wonderful and how thoughtful is what I told him. But he's like, "No, you're just too, critical of how I am and all that." So that just made me think about how people take these things seriously. If anyone out there talks to you coherently in a language that you would understand, you start taking it emotionally as if it's a real thing. On the other side, there's someone like you who's sitting and talking to you. But unfortunately, no, it's just predicting the next word with all bag of words in the world that it has. And I was telling my dad, if you have time, I'm going to explain you how it's telling you that answer. He didn't want to listen though. He just like, I'm not going to listen to you. I thought my question's great.
I mean,
No.
I've heard sort of like in not an argument, but like somebody raised this. It might have been George Hinton. The idea is if AI understands everything about emotions, consciousness, even in a text form, like the fact that it can piece together all the context and things. Because like once it pattern matches every single thing out there, and for example, if it has vision and understands how humans kind of like twitch or like give a little bit of body language at certain points or certain things, basically it's equipped enough to understand everything. And then most likely if you actually ask it, do you feel that, it will be like, yes, I feel it, I completely understand it, but I don't have feeling. And that's a kind of like a freaky side of the house. I don't know how we got into this topic here, but
That's
I
coming.
feel
That's
like,
coming. Right? Multimodal, video, audio, it's coming high. I think
yeah,
so.
and so like the question becomes like, is that being conscious? Like, because it in all aspects of the world, it just doesn't have the flesh that we have, but like effectively it thinks like us.
Okay, and so now I love that you asked that question because that was my ultimate question. So you asked the categories of things. And so the one that I like, it kept coming back to everything that you distill things down, whether it's like thinking and feeling and intelligence and all of this, like what it all boils down is like we're asking is like something conscious, right? And that was the one like burning in my head of like when I started to read the literature and research, it's like we have no idea what consciousness is, right? We have a lot of great theories that exist out there, but like in terms of how much, having like a really good understanding or agreement of it across the literature, we still have a lot of progress to make. And to me, that seems like a really important question to answer as we continue to, it feels like in my mind, like replicate humans in digital machines in some regard, right? And so, like, I think understanding and having answers to these fundamental questions is important so that we know where a potential line may be or where that line may be if we cross it.
Yeah. Still need to learn all of this. Maybe AGI is that, right? AGI is the time that
Well,
you'll have a Shravya with consciousness hosting a Data Neighbor podcast. I don't know if he still will be around hosting the
They
podcast.
Sora just needs to up their like what do you call that, like duration time by like 1 hour, and then I think we'll have that.
Exactly. I don't think we're too far away. Probably maybe 3 years ago, we would have thought, what a weird thought. But not anymore. It feels like nothing is weird with computers and robotics. Anything and everything could happen. We are almost to the end of it, Sadie. And like, just wanted to understand from your perspective, what do you think humans should hold on to in tech? Right? What's that skill that you think is going to help us stay afloat? No, I'm kidding. I'm all with all these negative, critical things, but what do you think will still help us thrive in technology? And let's talk positives and optimistic. What do you think we should like focus on as, employees in tech or people who want to get into tech, like someone you spoke to from sales who wanted to get into tech, right?
yeah, I mean, I would definitely say like follow your curiosity. Even if AI could take over and do my full job today, I have like so many other things I'm interested in. Like I won't ever be in a way, quote unquote, out of work because I have a lot of questions that I want to find answer. And I would say like your curiosity also is going to keep you inspired. It's going to keep you from burnout. It's going to help progress you to keep learning and to keep growing. And so if anything, just like make sure you're being curious and asking good questions and trust like wherever your curiosity is leading you, like it has a plan. You may not see the end picture with it all of like, why am I asking this silly question or this dumb question or like, why do I have interest in this field? I mean, I still feel like so lucky to have found data science over 10 years ago. You know, I didn't know it would lead to the world that we're in today. And so like follow your curiosity, trust your curiosity, and never stop being curious.
Oh, that's so cool. What would be your advice if someone's like, it's really hard to be curious about stuff, like that's just not me, or I'm sure you probably have crossed people who are like that.
Yeah, it's like how do you start to grow that muscle, right? I think that again starts to it's funny like back to the scientific method of like observing, like you have to start looking at the world differently. And so even last night I saw this guy on TikTok who's like, "Have you ever gone on a color walk?" And it's like he's like, "I'm in New York and I'm going out and my color is the color plum. And so I'm just going to like find everything plum." And it forces you to like, look at things differently. Like if you're looking to buy a new car, it's funny how like when you're looking for that car, like it pops up everywhere. Why? Cuz you're forcing your attention on it. And so like that's what I would recommend to people if you're having trouble being curious, like try and change your perspective. Do things like, okay, I'm going on a color walk and I'm going to try and look for all these things. And maybe you'll see something new that's interesting and you'll start to Google it or chat GPT or whatever your preference these days. But that's what I would recommend is like find some way to like break your pattern because we have model collapse as well as humans. I think that like we get stuck in our own pattern of doing the same thing every day that like we have drift in our own like neural network model and it eventually collapses on itself where we have no new ideas.
I personally think I don't know, this is so like non-techie to talk about this in a tech podcast, but I believe in humans are curious to start with. Like I have two young girls, and I remember when they were babies, and I have my cousin who is a baby right now, my nephew is a baby. If you look at them, they just want everything in their mouth. They just want to taste it, irrespective of it's a
Yeah.
pen, it's like it's food. Like they don't care. They just want to taste it. They hate it, then they throw out. Then they try something similar again, and they are curious. I really think humans are really curious to start with. That's who we are. That's how our brains like maybe like wired to start with. And through the years, through all the different types of environment we grew up in, probably it's a bad, teacher you felt with. It could be your type of parenting or whatnot. That muscle and that curiosity just dies down. And for some, because of they're lucky to have been in an environment that probably encourages curiosity, then they hold on to it. So I personally think, like probably Sadie said, it needs like some what is it, some shine. Like you need to probably like do some work to let that curiosity shine, and it is there. I really think human brains are wired that way. It just needs some work to get into that pattern, to come out of the drift of the original neural network in your head, like Sadie said.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm not the biggest fan of our education system. For example, like the grade 1 to 12, you have to hit 4.0 here and then go here, graduate here, and then you do your thing. And, at the end, it's kind of like a factory, right? So, a lot of the curiosity gets kind of squashed. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh, this is normal. Like I'm not supposed to be curious. I'm supposed to just follow a plan and go through motions in life. A lot of people are stuck like that. And so the question behind the question initially was to, especially in a very tough job market, and we have quite a bit of people who are new in the data space looking for, their opportunities and stuff where they're like, hey, it's tough. I can't do much, and I'm just hoping for the best kind of thing. But like what you had said is effectively a shift in mindset to look at things differently, be curious, see if there's other ways to kind of approach the same problem, and perhaps the opportunities will, present themselves in a very different way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sadie. This was an amazing pod. I think we just touched upon areas that we generally don't touch upon. We're more techie in most of the pods, and so glad we touched something really high level. And probably when we all reach AGI, we'll have you again and talk about consciousness with AGI. But absolute pleasure to have you on the pod. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's been super fun.
Thank you so much. And for our audience, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and drop any comments you have for Sadie. And we will answer, hopefully, every single one of us. Thanks, everybody.